And now to today's guest. We are very grateful to have with us the Honorable Sam Killebrew, Representative for Florida District 41, as our guest. Representative Killebrew is incredibly engaged in the Winter Haven community, having owned several businesses and served as a volunteer for the Chamber of Commerce for many, many years, and serving as our board chairman in fiscal year 2007 and 2008. So Representative Killebrew, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. I hope that I don't disappoint on the information that I'm going to try to give them to let folks know what's actually going on up in Tallahassee these days with COVID, amongst other things.
Well, you are always very honest and transparent with us, and that is greatly appreciated. So we expect nothing short of that today as well. So I'll start with the easy question, Representative Killebrew. So for the chamber members on the call that may not know you, give us a little bit of information on your background, how many years you've served in the legislature, et cetera.
Okay. I was born and raised in Auburndale, went into the Navy, was there for 3 years, came back out, worked with my dad. After he passed away, over the years, I had 4 different companies and was very fortunate to have been able to hire really good people, and it made the company successful. After I retired, it didn't work for me. So Sheriff Judd asked me to run for state representative, and I said, there's no way. And but when Grady asks you to do something, you have to think about it. And so after 4, 5, 6 months, I said, if I'm ever going to do this, I got to do it now. And so I did. And then that became my job. And so campaigning for 1.5 years. I've been there through 2 sessions, my freshman, sophomore year, and I'm just now starting my junior year. We are allowed to run or serve 4 2-year terms, and then we're termed out.
Mm-hmm. And so, as you said, this is your junior year. So, the first year you're just drinking from a fire hose, if you will, from it. But now I think we can safely say you are seasoned in terms of it. But of course, you go back for your junior year and it's a lot different circumstances. So let's start a little bit with what committees are you serving on this year in session?
Okay, the committees that I have, I'm on children, families, and seniors. And I figure that's because I'm a senior, right? Government ops, operations, professional and public health. These are all subcommittees. Public integrity and elections, state administration and tech appropriations. And then I'm on one of the big committees, and that's ways and means. So those are the 6 that I'm on this year. Mm-hmm.
And have you seen any bills come through those committees? Because obviously for our listeners, even though session starts March 2nd, right, you have been in pre-session since late last year. So September, October, November, you've been going up for several weeks each month. And there have been a lot of movement already. You've already heard bills through committees and things of that nature. So you really start officially, but you could be voting on bills as early as technically March 2nd, because you've heard a lot of these so far. Mm-hmm. So have you seen any bills come through those committees pre-session that you think that the business community or the broader Winter Haven community should be aware of?
Right. In the committees that I'm in, I have not seen anything that would relate to businesses, chamber membership, that kind of thing. In fact, I have only, in the committees that I've been in the last 6 weeks, if I counted it up right, I've only heard 4 bills.
Oh wow!
This is a different part that's going on up there. Very few bills are being heard. Of course, the leadership bills are being heard, 1 through 10, and moving right along. But for some reason, they are really slow in agendaing bills, and so some of them are moving, but it's very few. So I think we will be pretty busy in actual session. Mm-hmm. Hearing a lot of bills during committee, and then of course once they get through committee, then they wind up on the floor if they
Mhm.
pass all the committees. But it's really been strange. By now, we would have heard, 50, 60, 70, 80 bills easily. But that is all determined by leadership, which is the speaker, his chief of staff, and the what I call staff department heads, which we call them silos. It's health silo or insurance or those type of things. And those are the worker bees in those silos. But those are the three that pretty much determine what we hear.
So, because it's been interesting publicly, Representative Killebrew, there have been a lot of bills that have been introduced out there, whether it's via press conference or whatever it might be. So, for example, Governor DeSantis had a press conference yesterday where he talked about elections. And what was funny about it, and I only caught the first couple of minutes of it, but it was Florida did everything right. Basically, everything was good last election. We did everything right, but essentially we want to codify some of that into law, some of the ways we do things into clearer law or more transparent law. So I imagine that would probably be one that would come through eventually your elections committee.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. Again, if the governor would like to see it happen, at least he will get a bill without any problem. And I've seen a few things about it, the drop boxes and, harvesting ballots and those kind of things, which is pretty much what everybody has been seeing and reading about. And we can see where there's a potential for error or fraud. So, we've been at the very forefront in the United States in our elections, and I have to go back to the COVID handling, whether people think so or not. We're probably number one out there for doing what we've been able to do, but we do need to unfortunately get it into law. So then there's no argument, hopefully, and we can get it passed. And I would say that most of, if not all of what he wants to do will get passed.
Well, I have to say, from the Dropbox perspective, the Dropbox saved me on both of my ballots getting there on time. So I think there are many people like me out there that use the Dropbox. So I certainly hope that that's something that this is Katie Worthington talking, but I certainly hope that that's something that we can figure out, because it is a huge help. And I'll tell you, when I dropped off my ballot, Lori Edwards, Supervisor of Elections, was actually standing out there waving at people dropping off their ballots.
That's about as safe as you can get.
Exactly.
But that is the issue, is to be sure that they're safe,
right?
That maybe they're observed, and that's what they're not trying to do away with them. They just want to be sure they're secure.
Yeah, well, and I think it's surprising when we take our leadership groups through and they do a tour of the Supervisor of Elections, actually watching them match signatures. I mean, there's a human being there looking at signatures and things of that nature. So I think a lot of it's educating on, I think, what Florida has got one of the best systems out there, which we learned through the last election with, 99% of returns coming in and being counted that night, which is certainly, so other states have something to learn, right?
Yeah, Lori does an awesome job. She really does, and her people, Betsy and all of them, and Barbara, you can't say enough about how well they handle our elections here in Polk County.
So personally, Representative Killebrew, what are your priorities this session, and have you filed any bills yet?
Well, we're allowed to, typically we're allowed to file 6 bills. The speaker allowed us to file 7 this year. No explanation, it's just, you can file 7. So I filed some bills, and again, let me give you the bills that I filed. I filed one called HB 13, which is about state funds. It's to stop the legislature from removing or sweeping funds out of the Sadowski Affordable Housing Fund. Okay, that's one of them. I have one in to stop retail sales of dogs and cats in pet stores. I've got one that is out there. It's injured police canines. For example, if a canine goes in and is injured, if there is not a human to transport, then the EMTs, et cetera, can transport that animal and do first aid, et cetera, on it. I've had a couple people look at me like they weren't really sure about that. And I said, well, we call police first responders, but the real first responder is that dog, because they go in where the police won't go in. So yeah. I see them as the first responders. But anyway, I think we've got a pretty good chance with that. I filed one of the senators asked me to file in the House, and it's called Courtroom Animal Advocates. And I'm not sure that it's a big issue, but a judge can assign trained attorneys to represent an animal in court if that comes up. And I'm not sure exactly how often that comes up. But
would that be in like custody cases or?
I'm sure it would be. I can't think of the things. In fact, I sent a thing to the senator and I haven't gotten anything back yet, but yeah, it's
almost like guardian ad litem, but for pets.
Yeah, for dogs or animals, period. So it's anyway, we have filed it and it's still alive. I filed a couple of bills for a representative friend of mine because I did not have more bills. Nothing that I had come up with. Nobody had brought me any to look at. And so I filed them and he is the co-sponsor. And so he will handle that bill. I really won't even do anything other than my name is on it. Now we've put in some appropriations. We've got Eagle Lake. I've been putting in one for Eagle Lake now since I started for some lift stations and stuff. We've got Haines City, Lake Eva Park, ADA, Northridge Trail Phase 1, Town of Dundee, mosquito control. We've got those kind of things that we put in. We know it's going to be tough with the budget, but I told the cities at least put them in. If you can't catch that fish if you don't cast out. So let's just keep putting them in and see what happens. So that's my bills. But to go back to where I am with my bills, as of now, the injured police canine and possibly the courtroom animal advocate are the only two bills I still have alive. Leadership has decided not to hear my state funds bill on the Sadowski and not to hear my retail sale of domestic animals. And
do you think the Sadowski fund is related to they're unclear on what the budget is going to look like when everything shakes out? Or why do you think that's something that they have said not this year, Sam?
Are you ready for all this?
Now we're recording, so I just want to remind you.
Well, there's several things. Back when this was established in 1992, I think, all the funds, when you had property, you paid a tax and so much 100 and it went in, and it was used exclusively for affordable housing. And 2002 or 4, the legislature passed a law that says you can sweep money out of those trust funds. Okay, so you can reach in and grab some of that money that was designated for affordable housing and take it out and put it into general revenue. They do that in order to balance the budget, because Florida is a balanced budget state. So we have to balance our budget. I personally don't think if you have to reach into a trust fund and pull money out to put it in the general fund to balance your budget, you don't have a balanced budget, because I don't know any of us that have trust funds that, we can work on for our budgets. So there was an issue about using it for emergencies. And in my bill, they are allowed to sweep or remove funds if the governor or the legislature declares emergency. You know, whether it's COVID, with hurricanes, whatever it is, they can still go in and invade that and take it out. I'm learning a lot more about the Sadowski fund. Since 1992, the state has removed 35% of the funds out of there, which is $2.8 billion. That $2.8 billion could have been used for affordable housing. And anybody that studies it or knows or is involved in it, every city, every county is so far behind. We're at least 900,000, a million people behind on what we need for down payment assistance, rent assistance, and a variety of things. And they told me that they see this as a Democratic bill. And it was hard for me to understand that, because I don't know how any Republican or Democrat would not be for affordable housing. I think if you asked any one of them one-on-one, they would tell you, yes, we think this is good, we need to do this. But for some reason, leadership, and every 2 years we get a new leader, so we get new marching orders, sees it that way. And so I was really disappointed in that, because we have a huge affordable housing coalition in Florida, and its membership looks like the Florida Chamber membership. In fact, the Florida Chamber is actually in it. I mean, it's some huge companies and stuff that are all in this thing that also put money in. So if I can get one or two of my bills through, then when I come back, I'm starting on the Sadowski bill again. But this time we're going to try to get out and inform the public as to what's really happening, in that you were told your money goes here for this, and now it's not. And I say, if you don't need all the money, then reduce the tax that you're charging the citizen and give it back to them. Instead, they sweep it to balance the budget.
Right. So. Well, and that's what is appreciated in particular about you, Representative Killebrew, is that you take off your Republican and Democrat hat many times to say, what do the people need? And this is certainly every city, regardless whether they're run by Republicans, Democrats, independents. Every city is struggling with what to do and how to fund affordable housing initiatives. So we certainly thank you for taking that mantle. One of the chambers, and this is actually a question that came in from one of our members as well. One of the chamber's top priorities is COVID business liability protections. And some people have asked me, I mean, is this really an issue? Are people getting sued out there? And the answer is yes. People are starting to be sued out there for whether someone who thought that they got COVID at a place of business, or someone that passed away that their family believes that they got the illness at work and the business was not taking proper precautions, if you will. So right now there are two bills, two versions of bills, one related to healthcare and then one related to more primary or general business. So what do you think the likelihood is that some sort of COVID liability protection will pass? And obviously, there'll be amendments and things of that nature, but what's your feeling on it at this point in time?
I think they'll both pass, and I am for it one time. I try to explain to people. They say, "Well, you're not protecting the people. You're not doing." COVID just run up on us, and we didn't have a rule book or a plan or anything, and so nobody really knows exactly what to do. But businesses can't get back into business and operate if they're worried about lawsuits. And we all know that there are attorneys out there that is their that's how they make money. And they will start advertising for people who think they caught COVID a business, write us. And I mean, it'll just be endless. And so I thought the governor and the speaker were way ahead of the curve in bringing this up. This is HB 7 is the speaker's bill, but the governor is totally behind it, and I'm sure the Senate is too. But I think both of them will pass, and I think healthcare ought to have it. I mean, nobody knew what to do, so everything was guessing. And if you still got people running around that won't wear masks, and I do where I think it's appropriate. I always tell people I'm more concerned about washing my hands than I am wearing a mask. Because anytime you walk into a place of business or anywhere, first thing you do is put your hand on the counter or on the doorknob or whatever. So I think that's an issue that they don't promote enough. And so far, I've been lucky. Nobody at my house and my family has had it. So, and this will pass. It'll be good. Once people start getting vaccinated, mindsets change, people start going out, money starts flowing. And I don't think our budget deficit is going to be near what is projected. We've been ahead in the last two reports. So.
Yeah. Another priority that is being discussed, well, and one thing on the COVID liability, I have tuned in, and that's one thing our members can do. You can actually sign in and watch these committee hearings, and you'll be able to do that during session as well.
Sure.
And so there has been very thoughtful bipartisan debate over those bills. There is one or two provisions in the bills, which is people have lasered in on, which is primarily related to a doctor's affidavit to basically say, yep, that's where I think they got it type of thing. But overall, in terms of the overall theme of the bill, it seems to be very bipartisan in its agreement. And you have a lot of small business owners in the legislature as well that understand that. So another priority, which is being called in chamber circles, it's being called the Main Street Fairness bill, which primarily is an internet sales tax, which is something that has not always, but has been there. It's just not something that people have widely understood that they are supposed to pay that on their own, even if the website doesn't charge it for you. So talk a little bit about the efforts. I know that I think it's in the Senate, it's already had a hearing, but tell us a little bit about that and whether you think that will go through.
That's HB 15 by Representative Clemens, who's a great guy. Very smart, but it never made sense to me that we shouldn't have to pay sales tax, because I'm not a tax guy, but we should be paying the sales tax on online purchases, and it comes back to the state. But to me, it's not fair to the mom and pop businesses, to have to compete with somebody, because I mean, they're already 7% lower than you are. And it just never seemed fair to me that that we weren't on an equal, that everybody was on an equal footing with it. And so I really think it'll pass. And if so, it'll be a goodly amount of sales tax that we will start having here in the state. And again, if you had bought it here in the state, you would have been paying it. The money you pay comes back to the state, so it's not like it's lost out there. So I'm in favor of it, and again, I really think that this will pass this year.
And there are some discussions about trying to make it revenue neutral, which, part of me thinks, but it could be a boon in terms of to the general fund. Maybe they wouldn't have to raid the Sadowski fund or something along those lines. But at the same token, they want to make sure the public understands that it's not a new tax or an increase in tax. And so I know there are some discussions about whether to make it revenue neutral by evening out some other fees or taxes or whatever that may be. So I think that's a to be continued discussion, but something we'll certainly watch over session. So
because it's not going to go away, and unfortunately or unfortunately, there's going to be more online purchases. So to me, it's just common sense that we need to do that. And again, I don't see that as a tax increase,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but that's me.
So how does advocacy look different this year in Tallahassee? I know you said it felt a little strange before we hopped on the call. You said it's just different. It just feels different. But how does advocacy look for our members that may want to advocate for things this session?
Well, to be able to advocate, email is the prime way to do it. Phone calls still good. We may have to call you back depending on what we're doing. Staff and members are the only people allowed in the Capitol. And we all have to be tested either Sunday or Monday before we go in to be sure that we're negative. And we have to do that every week. So if a lobbyist wants to come and speak to us, or we want them to come, we have to invite them. They come in, they go to the fourth floor, they go through a process there. My aide will go down, get them, bring them up, we'll talk, carry them back down, and then they're out the building. Which normally you've got people, well, you've been up there, you got people everywhere. I mean, there's a hamburger day, there's a nurse day, there's just thousands of people in and out of the building. And sometimes we complain about it because we can't get an elevator, but right now it's like a tomb up there. I mean, there is nobody. It's like being there on a Sunday. Very few staff walking around, very few representatives. And most representatives, if you were on a committee and they want you to hear or approve their bill, they will send you a text and sometimes a letter, or they make a phone call. A lot of times before, they would catch you somewhere and say, "Hey, I got this bill coming up. You're on this. How about taking a look at it?" So it is really that's what's the biggest difference is just nobody around, and it's quiet. And it's hard to get to people. But the advocacy, other than being able to come up and be in person and wandering around the Capitol and stuff, is still the same. I encourage the email because that's the easiest, quickest way for us to respond, find out what you want, and then try to respond to that. But phone calls are fine too, letters, whatever they want to send, but I'd encourage the email.
Very good. Well, and your legislative staff is on it. They're incredibly responsive, which is great. So we do have a couple of questions from the audience. One, and this is not necessarily something that's come through your committees yet, or even may come through your committees, but last year, as you're well aware, there was a increase to teacher salaries built into the budget. And this is also on Polk County Public Schools legislative agenda, which the chamber has adopted. So the specific question is, can you tell us if there is any plan in the upcoming budget to increase existing teacher salaries?
I haven't seen anything to increase it. I think they will. I really think they'll fully fund what they funded last year. I can't imagine that they would not do that. I really think that education, Medicaid, those kind of in the Tampa state, the top three that take up 75% of our budget, I think should all be pretty much fully funded. And I would hope that they would keep everybody's base coming in. For example, Polk State, they've got like a $31 million base that they just don't touch it, and I understand that. I'm hoping, because I know what a big advocate the governor is for education. And so I'm hoping that we will stay even as we go into this year until we can find out if there are other areas that we can pick up income from next year.
So, and that's one question too. So the trend the past couple of years with Governor DeSantis is, he is very serious about his veto pen. So when he looks at the budget, You talked about the appropriation requests that you have put in. The city of Winter Haven certainly has some requests when it comes to water infrastructure. Polk State has their primary request, Florida Poly. I mean, everybody kind of has their the perennial requests,
Sure.
whether it be don't take anything away. And oh, by the way, if you have something, could you contribute it? And that sort of thing. But one of the trends that we've seen is that projects that are perceived as more local projects sometimes don't make it across the finish line. Do you think that will be a similar trend this year?
Just my personal opinion, yes.
Okay.
You know, I said before we ever got up there, if they want to adjust the budget, we know that there's the three big ones that we have to do. If I was going to cut, I would start with, and people like to hear it, is members' request. But I would look at every member. If I'm going to cut member requests, I'd cut everybody's, so it's even across the board. You know, nobody wants to hear that, but you know, that might be a place that we can start. But again, it depends on leadership and where you are in the pecking order up there. So and I really don't know what areas that they're going to be looking at to pull funds from to balance the budget, other than sweeping trust funds.
So one other question we got from our membership, and this is specific to Habitat for Humanity, and thank the team there for sending in this question. But as they mentioned, and of course, those that are familiar with Habitat for Humanity, obviously they're building houses and getting people into these houses.
Sure.
And they noted a major rate hike for homeowner insurance premiums for 2021, which in the circle, their statewide network really came as a surprise to their statewide network. And their goal, their mission is to really provide affordable housing.
Right.
And so what, I know I did send this question to you because it is more of an in-depth question, but what are your thoughts on that in terms of the major increase to the homeowners and how it's impacted organizations like Habitat for Humanity and their residents?
Well, I didn't know anything about it until you sent it, and I read Brenda's letter in there, and I was taken back that the increases were 30, 50%, those kind of things. And I thought, where is that coming from? So what we did is we reached out to the Office of Financial Officer, Jim Petronas' office, and his legislative people, as well as the Office of Insurance Regulation. We did that yesterday to see, we're actually, what we're doing is we send in Brenda's letter to these people and say, how do we answer this? Okay. And that we find that's the easiest way, sometimes the quickest way to maybe get a good answer. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know why, if it's just specific to Habitat. I don't know. Because again, I was surprised when you sent it to me and what it said. But we will, in fact, we're going to check back today just to see exactly who at the Office of Insurance has our information, so we can kind of prod them a little bit. So hopefully over the next week or 2 weeks, we'll be able to come up with some kind of an answer, good, bad, or indifferent. But I really would like to hear an explanation, because it doesn't make sense in that area.
Right.
You know, exactly. I mean, nobody likes to have increases, but you know, when you're doing a Habitat, you know, that's a special issue.
So I'll remind everyone on the call, if you have any other questions, feel free to drop those into the Q&A. And then, as you've heard Representative Killebrew say, you know, if throughout session you have questions or concerns within your specific industry, you can send those to me, and I will be more than happy to communicate to Representative Killebrew or to Samantha, as Legislative A, or Renee, or anybody on the team to try to get answers for you on that particular issue. And I mean, even in non-session, as Representative Killebrew got a couple emails about duck hunting from me. And for those of you that live in Winter Haven are probably laughing because it's only a couple weeks a year, but man, you know when it's happening at 4 a.m. on a Sunday morning. So there were some questions about that, and Representative Killebrew was good to do some research for me on that as well. So I don't see any other questions that have come in today. So I do want to thank you so much, Representative Killebrew, for coming on the call today, for being an advocate for the issues and the priorities, whether it be Polk State or the city of Winter Haven or the many other things that are that we bring to you each session. We pass a legislative agenda that we believe is important to the business community. And we appreciate you taking that and running with it each year. So,
well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk to folks, and because we can't get together at this time, and I miss those meetings. But you know, it's for me. I pretty well tell it like it is, the way I see it, and as you said, I am pretty much a bipartisan legislator, and again, I'm a little bit unique up there to them, and sometimes they have to get used to me. So
they have to figure out how to work with you.
Between me and Ophelia, they're trying to figure out what's going on up there. So,
well, and I'll remind everybody on the call, we are going to do weekly updates. So this session, we will be doing virtual Capital Connection, or as one of our members called it, CapCon, to make it sound really, really good. So we will be doing that every Tuesday morning at 10. And I know sometimes you'll be in committee meetings, but if you're ever available and want to pop onto those calls, or you have something going on you want to make sure our members know about, we will definitely keep you in the loop on that, so you can give an update. But we'll be following the Chamber's legislative agenda, obviously, but will also be any issues that come up from our membership. So Sam, thank you so much again for taking the time today. We really appreciate it. And everyone for dialing into the call. We appreciate your engagement in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Katie. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right.
Bye-bye.